Medieval life in Europe was characterized by a complex social, economic, and political structure that revolved around the feudal system. The feudal system was a hierarchical structure in which landowners or lords granted land to tenants or vassals in exchange for loyalty, military service, and other duties. The majority of the population in medieval Europe were peasants, who lived in small, isolated communities and engaged in agriculture to sustain themselves. They worked on the lands of the lord in exchange for protection and a portion of the harvest. The wealthy aristocracy lived in castles and manors, where they enjoyed luxurious lifestyles and engaged in activities such as hunting, falconry, and jousting. The church was also a central part of medieval life, and religion played a significant role in people's daily lives. Christianity was the dominant religion, and the church wielded immense power and influence over society. Monks and nuns lived in monasteries and convents, where they devoted themselves to prayer, study, and other religious activities. They also provided education, healthcare, and shelter to the poor and needy. Castles were an essential part of medieval life and were built for protection and defense. They were constructed in various forms and sizes, depending on their purpose and the terrain of the surrounding area. There were many different types of castles, but the most common were motte and bailey castles, stone keep castles, concentric castles, and fortified manor houses. Motte and bailey castles were the earliest form of castle and consisted of a raised mound or motte, topped with a wooden or stone keep, and surrounded by a walled courtyard or bailey. The motte was usually artificial and provided a strategic advantage, allowing defenders to see incoming enemies from a distance. The bailey was the enclosed courtyard, where soldiers and their families could live, and where food and supplies were stored. Stone keep castles were developed in the 12th century and were primarily built from stone. They had a rectangular or circular keep, which was the main residential and defensive structure. The keep was usually several stories high and had thick walls, narrow windows, and a single entrance. The castle's main gate was protected by a drawbridge, a portcullis, and towers, and the walls were often fortified with battlements and turrets. Concentric castles were developed in the late 12th century and were built with two or more concentric walls, which provided multiple lines of defense. The castle's inner walls were taller and thicker than the outer walls, and the space between them was filled with obstacles such as ditches, moats, and spiked wooden barriers. The castle's main entrance was protected by a gatehouse, which had a drawbridge, a portcullis, and murder holes in the ceiling. Fortified manor houses were smaller than castles and were usually built by wealthy landowners. They were fortified with walls and towers and had a central courtyard, where the residents lived and worked. The manor house's main entrance was protected by a gatehouse, which was usually a single-story building with a portcullis, a drawbridge, and murder holes in the ceiling. During the medieval period, castles were built with various defensive features to withstand attacks, including the use of siege weapons by the enemy. The most common types of siege weapons used against castles were trebuchets. These were large, medieval siege engines used to hurl heavy objects, such as boulders, stones, or fireballs, over the walls of the castle. They were powered by a counterweight mechanism and were capable of throwing projectiles over long distances. Battering rams. These were large, heavy wooden beams used to break down the castle gates or walls. They were operated by a group of soldiers who would swing the ram back and forth, building up momentum before striking the gate or wall. Siege towers. These were tall, wooden structures that could be pushed up against the castle walls, allowing soldiers to climb over the walls and enter the castle. They were often built with multiple levels, allowing soldiers to attack from different heights. Catapults. These were small, handheld devices used to throw stones or other projectiles at the castle walls or defenders. They were often used in large numbers, with soldiers firing them simultaneously to overwhelm the defenders. Siege engines. These were large, stationary devices used to launch heavy projectiles, such as stones or logs, at the castle walls or defenders. They were often built on wheels, allowing them to be moved into position and adjusted for accuracy. Mining. This was a slow and dangerous process in which tunnels were dug under the castle walls, and wooden props were used to support the walls as they were undermined. Once the tunnel was completed, the wooden props would be set on fire, causing the walls to collapse. In response to these siege weapons, castles were designed with various defensive features, such as high walls, battlements, arrow slits, and moats, to make it more difficult for attackers to breach the defenses. They also had various offensive weapons, such as ballistae and crossbows, to counter the enemy's siege weapons. Despite these defenses, many castles were successfully attacked and taken by enemy armies. In such cases, the defenders would often resort to desperate measures, such as pouring boiling oil or water on the attackers, or dropping heavy objects on them from the castle walls. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.